I often get the question, how long should a sprint be when using the Scrum framework? 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks? Who decides how long a sprint should be? What's the ideal size, the ideal length for a sprint? Should it be fixed? Can it change? So many questions, and like many things in Agile and when using the Scrum framework, there's a lot of confusion. In this video, you get the answer to all these questions and even more. First, what is a sprint? As per the Scrum Guide 2020, sprints are the heartbeat of Scrum, where ideas are turned into value. They are fixed length events of 1 month or less to create consistency. A new sprint starts immediately after the conclusion of a previous sprint. All the work necessary to achieve a product goal, including sprint planning, daily scrums, sprint review, and the sprint retrospective, happen within the sprint. But why? Why do we even sprint? The easiest way to understand what's a sprint, why do we sprint, is to treat them like projects. Not any type of projects, mini projects. So we have a big project which spans across multiple months, and inside that we have some mini projects, tons of mini projects, fixed length. Let's take, for example, we are doing a 2-week sprint. 2-week sprint. Tons of little small sprints, so small projects of 2 weeks, fixed length. Look at it like a day. The sprint is a day, 24 hours. You can't increase, you can't get more than 24 hours if you have more work to be done during the day. No, you can't increase it. It's a fixed length mini project of 2 weeks. The team commits on a list of things to do during these 2 weeks, and after the 2 weeks, we do a sprint review. Look at it like a product launch. And we also do a sprint retrospective. Look at it like a lessons learned. All the things that we usually do in project, we do the same thing, but we do it every 2 weeks in a mini project. Again, as per the Scrum Guide 2020, sprints enable predictability by ensuring inspection and adaptation of progress towards a product goal at least every calendar month. When the sprint's horizon is too long, the sprint goal may become invalid, complexity may rise, the risk may increase. Shorter sprints can be employed to generate more learning cycles and limit risk of costs and effort to a smaller time frame. Each sprint may be considered a short project. It's already there. The answer to how long a sprint should be already in the Scrum Guide. You just need to read it. But it's specified not too long and not too short. But what does long and short even mean? Is it 2 weeks? 1 week, 3 weeks, who knows? We already know that sprints shouldn't last more than 1 month. We just read that in the Scrum Guide. So let's break it down into 2 simple groups. Shorter sprints, 1 to 2 weeks, and longer sprints, 3 to 4 weeks. There's a general consensus that shorter sprints, 1 to 2 weeks, are better. Here's why. First, and one of the biggest reasons why people like short sprints, it creates this sense of urgency, like you're doing a mini project which has an end, and you're rushing towards, you're sprinting for 1 to 2 weeks to complete this mini project. You also get feedback more often. You're releasing more often, so you're getting feedback from customers, from clients, from stakeholders more often, which is good, usually good. It allows you, the more feedback you get, the more valuable feedback you get, the more value you can input, you can produce in the next iterations of a product. Shorter sprints are also recommended for newly created team. A newly created team should take around 4 sprints, 5 sprints to reach their potential. A stable velocity in 4 sprints, 5 sprints. If you're doing 1 month sprints, that's 5 months. If you're doing 1 week sprints, that's 5 weeks. Shorter sprints, more data because you're ending and starting and ending more mini projects. You're simply getting more data. And everything is shorter. The sprint planning, instead of 8 hours, 4 hours, 2 hours, 3 hours. Who wants to sit in a meeting for 8 hours for a 1 month sprint? No one wants to do that. The sprint retrospective happens more frequently, so you can work on smaller changes during the sprint. A 2-week sprint, every 2 weeks, you're trying something new, you're experimenting with something new, you're getting more feedback. When working in shorter sprints, we can't have large user stories. No, we are sort of forced to break down these user stories into smaller user stories, smaller chunks that we need to complete by the end of a sprint, and this increases visibility, transparency. We see it clearly through the board. Shorter sprints, we see it moving across the Scrum board or the Kanban board that you're using, and people are more focused. Shorter sprints, shorter goal, shorter time frames. Everyone is in a sort of rush. Impediments are cleared more often, are raised more often, because everyone wants to work together. Everyone is driven and motivated to get things done. We only have 1 week. We only have 2 weeks. Now, what about longer sprints, 3 weeks, 4 weeks? Is it better? Well, some people assume that when they're just starting to use Scrum, newly created Scrum teams, shorter sprints, not good. We prefer 1 month sprints compared to a 2 week sprint. It's easier to complete something in 1 month compared to 2 weeks. Yeah, It makes sense, but is it really true? Why are you using Agile? Why are you using Scrum? Most of you were using an older waterfall model previously, working for several months and then releasing a big thing in one go. Was it working for you? Why was it not working for you? Because it's too much. Too much. Big project, tons of uncertainties, tons of risk, shorter time frames, easier. It looks harder, but it's easier. In all projects, there's urgency. Urgency will happen if you're doing 1 month sprints, 2 week sprints, but the shorter time frame, the shorter the project is, reduced uncertainty, reduced unplanned events, because you can simply say, let's talk about that in the next sprint. Let's move the unplanned event to the next sprint and plan it correctly because you're doing 1 week sprints. And there's another assumption that I hear often when you do longer sprints, 1 month sprint compared to a 2 week sprint, you're doing less Scrum events here, simply because in 1 month you're doing only a single sprint. So it's 1 sprint review, 1 sprint retrospective. If you do 2 week sprint in 1 month, you're doing 2 sprint reviews, 2 sprint retrospectives. So it's better. No one wants to attend these meetings, these Scrum events. But that's not really totally true. It's partly true, simply because when you're doing 1 month sprint, the sprint planning will be 8 hours. Who wants to sit in a meeting for 8 hours? You're doing less sprint plannings, yes, but it's longer. You have to work longer because you're planning a full month of work. And that's really hard to do. Before guiding you on how to pick the ideal sprint length for your Scrum team, who usually makes this decision? The Scrum Master, the product owner, stakeholders, who decides on the sprint length? Like many things in Scrum, the whole team decides. Yeah, the whole team needs to have a consensus on the sprint length. We are just experimenting with something. A sprint length, if it doesn't work, we can increase it, we can reduce it. And sometimes, though, consensus is not met, the Scrum Master should make everything, like facilitate every session possible to have a consensus on all decisions taken by the team, including the sprint length. If a Scrum Master can't do that, I would say that the Scrum Master needs to pick the sprint length. Yeah, the Scrum Master should pick it simply because we are experimenting with something. It's not set in stones. No, we can change the sprint length afterwards. We're just experimenting with something. And if there's no consensus, let the Scrum Master pick it. The Scrum Master should play it like we are experimenting with that for like 1 month, and then we can change it if it doesn't work. But at least we're trying something. Now, to pick the ideal sprint length for your Scrum team, you need to answer a few questions, starting with a release cycle. How often do you need to release the product to the market to get feedback from customers? The shorter the release cycle, the shorter the sprint. If you need to release every single week, why not try 1 week sprints? You need to release every 2 weeks, 2 week sprints. You need to release 1 month, start with a 1 month sprint. If it doesn't work, reduce it. I don't like 1 month sprint because I believe it's too much. 2 week sprints, ideal for me, even if you need to release every single month. Remember, the goal of a sprint is to build this potentially shippable increment of a product, not release it to the market. Just place it in production, maybe turn it off for customers, actual live customers, but at least you're releasing it. You're doing this release process. So shorter sprints, always better if you want feedback from customers, if you have shorter release cycles. Question number 2, how often do you need feedback from customers, from your stakeholders? The more uncertain, the more risk there is when building this product. You don't really know what the market wants. You don't really know what the stakeholders want. Shorter sprints to get more feedback. If you're working on a new technology, you don't really know what you're doing, a new team maybe. Shorter sprints increases the amount of feedback from the product owner, from the stakeholders, from the market. And the more feedback you get, the more you are sure that you're creating a valuable product for the customer. That doesn't mean that newly created Scrum teams need to do 1 week or 2 week sprints. No, I'm not saying that. I usually recommend for newly created Scrum teams, they don't really know what Scrum is about. They don't know what Agile is about. So do 3 week sprints, at least for 2 sprints. Just so that we can get used to it, used to the way of working, used to the Scrum events. Then you can reduce it to 2 weeks or 1 week sprints. But at least when starting out, start slowly. Start learning slowly. Observe first. Get used to the practice. Get used to the process. And then you can change it later. Which brings me to my next point. If you want more tips, insights on Agile, Scrum, personal growth, click on the video that stands out the most on the screen right now. And I'll see you in a few seconds.